Alright, I am going to be cleaning an AR-15 that is, let's see, tape measure in here. We'll use this. This AR-15 is, let's see, it's got about a 10.5-inch barrel on it, and it's considered a pistol, and I'm going to show you that. So that's it. Has a collapsible stock on it right there. Oh, camera lost me. There we go. Find me. There we go. Has a collapsible stock. Has a hollow sun solar powered circle dot optic. It's pretty dirty. I've probably got 500 rounds to 1,000 rounds through this without cleaning it. I used to be a fanatic about cleaning all my guns and or weapons from when I was in the service. You never called it a gun. That's what your grandpappy had. But anyway, this is just a fun rifle. I painted it with Cerakote and shoot it for a hobby and just fun and target shooting. And now I'm going to clean it. It's not been cleaned in a long time. So that used to bother me because I was trained to clean your guns all the time, anytime you were sitting still. But I've been kind of experimenting with this, seeing how dirty it could get and if it would still function. Well, I shoot it suppressed. I have a Huxworks 556 suppressor, which is one of those flow-through suppressors. So it's not a lot of back pressure, but it did get pretty dirty. It is I think that's a Toolcraft chrome. I believe it's a chrome, hard chrome coated BCG on a 1-in-7 twist FN double chrome lined barrel from Palmetto State. I really like those barrels quite a bit. I think they're very accurate, reliable. I don't know if chrome lining is all it's cracked up to be. I read lots of articles about nitriting, quench polish quench versus chrome, and there's a huge debate. I'm not shooting full auto. I just like them. So that's what I'm used to. I tend to buy those more than the others unless it's just a disposable AR I'm building for fun or plinking, or for someone else on a budget if they wanted me to help them build one. Other than that, it's got ambi controls. It does have an ALG trigger. If you're familiar with Geisley, they bought ALG, and it's a really good trigger. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. It's probably 4.5 pounds or so. And it's got the Huxworks compensator. But it's been a good rifle. So I'm going to break it down and clean it. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk about tech support, how to manage your IT team. Specifically, this one's going to be, I'm really going to talk about ticketing, ticket counts, why that's important to know, how many tickets are being generated, and just that metric, just total ticket count. So let's get this thing popped open, and I will clean this while I talk. All right, so total ticket count is a very dangerous metric. If it's not handled right, well, it'll cause you a lot of grief in your business. If you've ever called let's say you call AT&T. I'm gonna pick on them. I don't know if they're this way still, but it used to be if you called AT&T, any of the real big ISPs, phone service companies, it just seemed like their technicians wanted to just get you off the call as fast as possible, whatever it took to close that out. And that's usually a sign that the metrics used to manage the IT team or the team that's helping support you are really focused on volume of tickets. How many tickets can someone touch and close? And that needs to be a high number, and bonuses are usually based on that and other things. So what that does is it incentivizes people to game it. And so what they're going to do is they're going to try to get you off the phone as fast as they can and go to the next ticket. Well, in larger organizations, very easy for an IT team to hide because those calls that come right back in go to a different technician. Maybe they don't have a ticket number to tie it together to show that one technician who was working it, who's just getting tons of tickets, is also getting lots of callbacks, right? So that ticket volume number, although it is very important, has to be tied to other metrics. But we're going to focus on that ticket volume number and what that means. Let me get my BCG apart here. So BCG, bolt carrier group, made up of a bolt, and this is the carrier. All that goes together. You can do that. It's flowing freely, very dirty. I should have put some rubber gloves on, but you can kind of see all that carbon on there. Pretty built up. carbon on that BCG. So let's get this tore down and then I will continue. All right. So there's my firing pin. Look how dirty that is. Let's see. You can kind of see that. Pretty dirty. So it's pretty dirty. That should be silver right there, and it is not. Not that bad though. I mean, it's still functional, still works. I'm going to go ahead and get myself a rag. And I'm going to go ahead and put some rubber gloves on because I am getting grit all over my hands. All right, so that number, total number of tickets, important number, does not mean anything without other metrics and KPIs. So how do you get that number? That's an important question because if you're an organization that doesn't have a ticketing system or doesn't have a tracking system for support requests. Usually that means that all the requests come into like an email or go directly to technicians into their email or what have you. I mean, really it's email is the only option if you don't have a ticketing system. And so they go in there and they work on, but you don't have a way to effectively track those tickets. How many are there and so on. Now you might ask your technician, hey, how many did you get? Well, they might tell you 15, 20 a day or whatever, but then that doesn't tell you close rate, time on ticket, response rate, how long it took for them to get to that ticket. Once they work the ticket, then how long did it take them to resolve it? Was there multiple touches? Did they resolve it once and it got reopened? So again, that number doesn't mean much without the other metrics, and I'm going to keep going back to that as we go. Let me get some cleaner here. We'll use that. So, all right, just wiping it down for now. I'm not going to do a super deep clean on these. I'm just going to try to get them clean enough, just where I'm happy enough with it, but we're going to see how we can get on this. All right, so on the ticket count, what is a good number of tickets for someone to get done? Well, it really depends on the role. Let me back up. So what I said a minute ago is really without a ticketing system, you're never going to have good numbers. You got to have a ticketing system, and that ticketing system needs to support certain things. I'm just talking about ticket count right now. So a very dumb or even an open source or free ticketing system can give you total number of tickets. And most of them can do some simple stuff like how many times is a ticket reopened. Now that relies on your team. Whenever a ticket comes in, a technician works it, and then the problem comes back, it relies on your team going back to the original ticket, reopening it and assigning it to that technician or a different technician so you can track ticket touches or reopens on those tickets. So, all right, that's getting cleaner. So you can start to see it's starting to get silver again. That's what it should have looked like earlier, and that's the bolt that goes into the bolt carrier group. So to give you an idea. So it does have a lot of carbon buildup around the lip, which is normal. Okay, let me get my scraper out here. We didn't have these when I was in the service, as far as I know, but these things are awesome. These little scrapers, you can get that carbon off these that gets baked on there from shooting. So as you start to track the number of tickets, what is a fair number? If you've got a tracking system, and again, that's a whole project unto itself. If you don't have one, don't just go buy something. You need to go through all of my video series on tickets and tracking and metrics and KPIs, and this is just the first in the series to get us started. That's a lot of carbon. All right, so now you got the number of tickets. You're at least tracking the number of tickets that are coming in. And what is a fair number? Well, it really depends on the type of technician. If we're talking help desk, a fair number of tickets is you can figure that the typical technician is going to be, and these are all more KPIs you need to track or you need to at least set. The typical technician should be what we call 80% billable per week. Now you could say per day, but we feel like stretch that so they can average it over a week. So they may have a day where they're stuck on 1 or 2 tickets and they had admin overhead to go through training or whatever. But billable means a ticket being worked for a user. In other words, reactive. A user had a problem. The technician is working on that problem for the user. Now, it may be reactive as in that you had an alert that happened on a server or patches missing on a computer. It'd still work, but that's another area where you can break those down, because you should care about reactive ticket numbers and proactive ticket. Maintenance, where you're going out and pushing updates to computers and servers and stuff like that. That's maintenance, that's proactive. Whereas reactive is you have an issue and usually someone is waiting to have that issue resolved. So that's important because that determines your customer satisfaction. If people are waiting, that's when they get unhappy. If you put a priority on maintenance that no one ever sees, well, it's still important to do maintenance, but it doesn't necessarily help you with your customer base and their satisfaction with the amount of service you do. If they're waiting hours or days to get tickets resolved, but your maintenance schedules are completely up to date, something's broken in the way you operate. Okay, so back to tickets. So what's fair? Well, there's a lot of the people out there have different numbers. So if we're talking help desk, say tier 1, tier 2, which is just anything on a desktop computer that could go wrong. We're not talking server related, Microsoft 365 connectivity issues. Just my computer's slow, my software didn't load, Outlook's running poorly or won't launch, Excel hangs, those kinds of tickets. You got to figure that the average person in your organization is going to probably use about 30 minutes of support per month, depending on the size of the organization. So let's say you got 100 employees in your organization. Each one of those people is going to use about 30 minutes of support and maintenance combined per month. So what we do is we say, the average person is going to need 15 minutes. The average ticket is probably going to take about 15 minutes to resolve on average. So if you are 80% billable, 80% of a week, 32 hours in a week is going to go towards solving problems, patching, maintenance, proactive and reactive support for a customer. So 32 of their hours should be solving problems. It's not lunches, it's not internal meetings, and so on. If you see that number dip below 80%, solving problems, then you have a problem in your organization with meetings or too much overhead management, and you need to remedy that, because those people need to be out there solving problems, not sitting in meetings all the time. Or your meetings need to be more efficient or less often or more compressed, however you need to do that. And that's actually something we see a lot. We see IT guys get pulled into all kinds of meetings and they never can do the hard work they have to. IT people have to focus to solve problems. They can't be interrupted all the time, and that's a very true fact. All right, so if we say about 15 minutes per ticket to solve them on average, that's a fair, if you've got a competent IT guy, that's pretty fair to be able to do. And why is that fair? Because you'd say, well, what if someone gets stuck on a ticket that takes 4 hours? Well, if we're talking about desktop support and a ticket taking 4 hours, it usually takes only about an hour to 2 hours to rebuild a computer with a brand new operating system. So that doesn't make sense, because when you cross over a certain threshold, it is probably time to rebuild that computer in most cases. And that should be part of your training and your standard operating procedures for your technicians. So let's go back to about 15 minutes. So 15 minutes, I'm going to get my calculator out again. If you have 32 hours to work, we're going to take 32 hours in a week divided by 15 minutes. 32 divided by, that'll be 0.25 equals 128 tickets per week divided by 5, which means you should be able to do about 25 tickets per day. Hey, that's a lot of tickets. Now, do I think someone could do a full 25.6? Probably not. It's probably going to be closer to 15 to 20. And it really, again, it depends on the complexity of the tickets coming in. I would say it is reasonable to expect your tier 1 guys to do anywhere from 10 to 30 tickets per day. And it really depends on, again, the complexity of the tickets that your technicians are working. If you are an engineering firm and your help desk guys are working on AutoCAD files and are expected to know that software very well, that's going to probably take more time whenever an issue arises than someone who's just working in Microsoft Office, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. If your organization has computers that are more than 5 years old, great example is if you have a bunch of laptops out there that are 10 years old, you're going to have a lot more tickets and you're going to have a lot more time on ticket, because those computers with an operating system with software being installed, uninstalled, and multiple patches, and you name it, they're going to have really weird ghosts in the machine that are going to take your technicians a lot of time to solve more often. But if you maintain newer equipment that is on a replacement plan, you will have fewer tickets, and your money goes into the hardware and software to run your business versus going into labor and employees to maintain the business. And that's one of the key metrics of making sure that your customers are happy. You can rob Peter to pay Paul. You can have really old equipment that looks good on your bottom line, but then have a swamped IT department with tons of turnover that you can't meet those expectations. And that's part of the, well, let's outsource. Well, then you outsource for a while. Let's insource because it's cheaper, and you can start this death spiral. All right, so anywhere from, say, 10 to 30 tickets per day is reasonable. But you also have to monitor that. When those tickets come in, let's say you have someone got 30 tickets done in a day. How many of those tickets were reopened? Do you have a good policy for tickets whenever they come back in? Someone calls in, puts in an email, and they say, hey, I was just working with Bob yesterday, and we thought it was working. It's not working now. And can I talk to Bob again? And that person says, oh, I can help you. No, it needs to either go back to Bob, or you need to have some way to note within your ticket that this is a reopened ticket, because that's another metric we're going to have to monitor. If you're getting lots of reopened tickets, people are playing the ticket game in order to look good on paper, but they are going to torpedo your reputation as an IT department. It's very toxic, very dangerous. It looks good. So that's that firing pin, nice and clean again. It's shiny like it should be. One of the things about hard chrome bolt carrier groups, and usually they're shinier than this one, which means that they're a little slicker surface, is you can wipe most of the carbon off with just a rag and maybe a little cleaner. This one was not quite as slick a surface as most hard chrome BCGs that I've used in the past, BCG being bolt carrier group. All right, so that looks pretty good, but I haven't taken, this is this right here. I haven't taken that, oops, right there. I haven't taken that off yet. That is the extractor. So we're going to pull that off and see how bad it is in there. Come on now, come on out. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So that's the inside of that. Let's see. I don't know if you can see that very well, but a little dirty. So not horrible. I mean, that's under the extractor. It's not horrible. We'll clean it out a little bit, get a little bit of cleaner in there and scrub on it. So when you clean these, so the thing about an AR-15 is the carbon, especially when you suppress them, comes back down through the gas tube and it dumps right into the chamber where the bolt carrier group is. One of the reasons that ARs get so dirty is because all that carbon comes back, and that's what forces the bolt and the bolt carrier to the rear of the rifle to eject the spent shell casing and feed a fresh round into the barrel. So you do get a lot more carbon buildup in these than you do in some of the other types of rifles like gas pistons. Like a good example, AK-47 is a gas piston rifle. And they don't get quite as dirty in the chamber. But of course, AKs look like they were hammered out of the fires of Mount Doom. So they're usually pretty rough looking to begin with. There's some really nice ones out there, but not. I got nothing against AKs, just not my choice. I have I have a couple of AKs. They're fun. Not most accurate. Don't really get me excited, but I'd rather have a Galil. If I'm going to get an AK, I want the world's best AK, which is actually a Galil. There may be some other variants that are just as good. All right, that's probably clean enough for that. So this is the cam pin. That's what holds the bolt carrier into the bolt. There's a couple of pieces that do that with a retaining pin. It's very dirty, but you know, that's not a big deal. It's just getting dirty is not going to really cause us any grief. Okay, so now that you understand that knowing the number of tickets being done for your group is important, and knowing the total number of tickets per technician is important, and knowing, or at least determining, what you consider to be a good workload acceptable by the organization, by technicians, based on the type of support and service they do. I'm going to talk about how do you actually know what good is. Well, I mentioned earlier that to know what good is, you have to know what kind of support's being done. This goes back to getting a very good ticketing system. So what is that? How does that work? Well, in our ticketing system, which is very good, it's one of the top rated ones out there, we can get all kinds of information out of that. One of the, it's not wire, one of the bits of information, sorry, can't do two things at once right now for some reason. One of the bits of information that we care about on ticketing is, well, I'm kind of getting myself sidetracked here. So when you have a ticketing system, you're going to have different KPIs and metrics, as we mentioned. So we want to have tickets broken down into type, subtype, and item. If you're familiar with ITIL, it's standards on how to track work and make sure that it's all being taken care of, and you've got documentation and process, change management, and so on. So we want to use type, subtype, and item. And so we break our tickets down into those three categories, and they're nested. So you have a type, like it might be account management. Your subtype is Microsoft 365, and your item might be password reset, whatever, right? And that's something you put a lot of time into how you do those, because in a modern ticketing system, you can start to put time on those, like budget time on the ticket. So what happens is, technician goes and puts a ticket in. They put in type, subtype, and item. You have what's called a ticket template, and that ticket template gets applied based on the type, subtype, and item. The ticket template then overlays your technician's ticket that he just created, or he or she just created, and it says this type of ticket should take less than 15 minutes. But if it's a more complex issue, it might say 30 minutes or an hour. Now you can track budget versus actual on what the organization's expectations are to solve that. Now your service manager or whoever monitors all those tickets and numbers can actually go in there and see, hey, whoa, we're way off of our budget numbers. What's going on? At one point, we were so far off many years ago that I went and bought these cube timers and put them on people's desks. And I said, look, if you're working the same ticket for more than 15 minutes, you need to go get help so you can figure out why it's taking so long, or you need to break and think about, am I wasting time? How much time do I think this is going to take? Maybe it's time to rebuild the computer versus try to fix the computer. Maybe because you got people waiting for these computers to be fixed, right? It's not just about your time; it's about the customer's time. Maybe your customer, or well, for us to be customers, maybe for you guys, you have 3 laptops sitting ready to go over here. You go get a laptop, you put it out for that user, get it set up in 30 minutes, they're operational again, they're productive. You go then take that computer over here and you wipe and reinstall and get it all set up, and then you go and you swap them back out. Then you take that computer that you set up for them and you go and wipe it, re-image it, and sit it back on the shelf. There's ways to do this so that you're not spending all this time trying to solve complex problems that aren't worth anyone's time to solve when a wipe reinstall will solve it, okay? You got to think that way. Otherwise, you end up with a technician who, I've been this technician. I've had a lot of these technicians. I'm going to just say it this way. I think everyone who's a good technician falls into this camp. They want to solve it, and they don't care if the whole business burns down around them while they solve it. They're not going to be beat by a technology problem, and that is wrong way to think. You're not being beat. You're being beat when you spend 4 hours to solve a desktop problem that could have been resolved with a wipe and reinstall. The winner in that is the one who looks at the problem, within 15 minutes says, this is a very unknown. I can spend 15 more minutes and put a new laptop out as a loaner, get them operational and productive. Now we're only out 30 minutes. I can take an hour and take that computer back to my office and kick off a re-image of it. Now I've re-imaged the computer and I take it back out and set it up for them. That is smart. That's winning, okay? You may be out 2 hours instead of 4 hours, and it's your time and their time. Because if you're working on their computer for 4 hours, you've lost 4 hours, they've lost 4 hours, the organization has lost 8 hours of productivity. If you took 3 hours or let's say this, if after 15 minutes you knew that you really didn't know how long it was going to take, and you had a loaner computer, and you went and gave them that, and 15 minutes later they're operational, they only lost 30 minutes. You may lose 2 or 3 hours because of it. But it's not about your time. It's about the customer's time. It's about the end user's time. You need to keep the organizational productive at all costs. To you, your time is not valuable as theirs. Okay, your time is valuable to the organization. So don't read into that. It's valuable to the organization. But when we're watching numbers, when we watch total number of tickets, when we watch total time on ticket, total number of tickets being reopened, time from a ticket open till worked, from worked to closed, when we have all these KPIs and metrics, what happens when you do what you just did is a manager looks at those numbers and says, wow, that's out of the ordinary. That's not meeting our KPIs. It doesn't mean you're in trouble. It means the manager says, what happened? Oh, you went over to do this thing. This is the type, subtype, and category. Here's how much budget time was on it. And the manager gets to make a call, and they get to say, oh, we don't have enough budget time, but enough time budgeted on that ticket type. We're going to increase it. Or it's a fluke. It's a one-off. We get it. You did your best. I read the ticket notes, and they should look at every time entry every week. Someone should be monitoring that. I looked at the ticket notes. No one's in trouble. Nothing's wrong. Keep up the good work. You're not getting dinged for it. Let's move on. Or maybe you need to be trained. Maybe you didn't have the right qualifications or skills to do it. What I like to do when I hire a new technician is I look at those numbers, and what I expect to see is technician starts here when they first start, and I watch them slowly get faster and faster, and I start seeing them get problems solved quicker and quicker because they start to learn where's our knowledge base articles for each client and so on, and I see them get faster and faster. Okay, I'm showing it going up. It's actually going down. They're slow, and they get faster and less time on the issues to get them resolved. Now, if I see someone going down and they just plateau here, and my other technicians are down here on average, I got a problem. Maybe it's a training issue. But you don't know that unless you got the metrics and the KPIs. It's not about catching your people out for failing. It's about understanding the business and taking care of your people. No one wants to be in a job failing. When you got metrics and KPIs, you can make sure that person in that role who feels like they're failing day in and day out is actually getting the training and support they need. And you know what? If they're not the right fit and you release them back to industry, you've done them a favor. They will go find somewhere where they can excel and do well. The worst thing you can do for someone is let them stay in a dead-end job. They're not qualified to perform, and they're not performing it well, and they feel defeated every single day. Don't do that to your employees. Take care of them. Care about them. Caring about them isn't letting them flounder where they're at. All right. So you've got your ticketing system. You're tracking the one KPI I really wanted to talk about today. Not the whole other 500, but you start with the one, and you start to figure out, okay, what is reasonable amount of time to put on tickets, to budget, and so on. Technically, that's another KPI. But the big takeaway from this, more than anything, is if you don't have a ticketing system that's robust enough to track KPIs, you're just never going to know where your team's at. Now, let's say you've got an IT team, and all the customers are happy, every employee thinks you guys are the bomb, that you take great care of them, the business loves you. We've been there. I mean, we've been there with our clients. Before we used to track KPIs when we first started the business, we were just out there doing work, right? Just get emails in, go do the work. And we lived that for a while. And then out of the blue one day, something changes. And what changes oftentimes is the company gets acquired by another company. That company that acquired you says, okay, I need to know what is the value of your IT team. We have an IT team in our corporate office. We think we can handle everything. Show me your value. How are you going to show it? You don't have any metrics, KPIs to show how your team performs. You don't have a system to show what are the average tickets. You don't have a replacement regimen for all the computers to be replaced on a schedule before they're completely failing. You don't have any way to show your value, and that's really bad. It's bad for your employees. It's careless, honestly, because if you care, you hold people accountable. They get promoted and excel based on performance metrics being met or exceeded. That's when you care. But your employees often are going to say, I don't want to follow any KPIs. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go out and take care of business. I don't have the time to go and put in tickets and type, subtype an item. And by the way, your numbers are not right. You can't tell me it only takes 15 minutes to do this thing. That's what they're going to say. I've seen it too many times. That's where you got to fix your culture. That's a whole nother discussion, and maybe I'll get into that next, or maybe I'll do some more KPIs. I have the bolt carrier group, well, not the carrier group, but I got the bolts clean. The extractor is clean, goes right there. We're going to go ahead and put that back on. If I can get it back together. Come on now. There we go. So interesting thing, if you're not overly familiar with AR-15s, so the this little pin that holds that in, there's nothing holding the pin in other than the tension of the spring on here. What keeps the pin from falling out is it actually rides inside here, and it can't fall out because it's actually basically stuck between the carrier. So brilliant engineering. I don't need a retaining pin. I don't have to have a cotter pin. It just stays because it can't get out of this. All right. So I didn't get a lot cleaned on this. I'm going to go ahead and finish that off camera. But the BCG is mostly clean. Well, the bolt is mostly clean. The BCG needs some more cleaning. I'm going to work on that. And then the firearm itself is still very, very dirty. You kind of see how much I'm wiping off just using a rag on there. Let's see. So, and when the bolt, let's see, right there. So the bolt rides in the upper. This is the lower, okay, lower. Let me turn it sideways. And it looks like this, kind of basically. And it goes through here, and it slides into the back right there, okay? But the gas comes through this gas key, and it dumps right inside here, but that gas forces that to the rear. And that's why you get so much carbon buildup in these, especially when they're suppressed. Okay, but that carbon, these things are really designed to take it. People are like, oh man, it's dumping all its carbon where it eats ammo. And the truth is, yes. Does it matter? Not as much as people try to make it out to be. It does get dirty. Yeah, you're going to have to clean it. But is it going to stop functioning after 1,000 rounds? Honestly, if you're using this thing for 1,000 rounds and your life depends on it, you got bigger problems. So anyway, all right, I'm going to go ahead and finish cleaning this. I hope this is helpful. You know, I kind of ramble, but I'm trying to cover all the different aspects of this. Especially as it comes to that one KPI I was trying to talk about today, and that is just ticket count. Why tracking total ticket count per week, per month, per year, per technician is such an important metric. It's not a good metric to follow all on its own. It will create a toxic environment for you, for your employees, and everyone else if you don't have other metrics and KPIs to go along with it. And I will touch on those next. All right, have a great rest of your week. Take care.